Good morning. Welcome to On Texas Football. Welcome into the Saturday conversation. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. This episode of On Texas Football brought to you by Tito's Handmade Vodka. We'll talk a little bit more about them later. But CJ, look, Longhorns making news yesterday afternoon by hiring Jabbar Juluke, running back coach, formerly at the University of Florida, now has been officially hired by the University of Texas. He was in Austin on Thursday and Friday interviewing. Actually accepts the job on Friday afternoon. Also was wanted by a couple other programs, Kentucky included. But what I find really interesting about this, and one of the things I want to discuss with you today, is this. Chad Scott was just let go on Monday. This is a very, very quick turnaround for Steve Sarkisian and his staff. My question to you is, do you think Steve Sarkisian may have let go of Chad Scott on Monday with the thought of hiring someone like Juluke by this week? I mean, because it was a very quick turnaround indeed.
I think that's absolutely the case. And look, with a guy like Juluke, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. He checks a lot of boxes, right? Territorial recruiting, marks. He's got obviously a history of development, a history of evaluation and finding guys under the radar who have NFL careers ahead of them. And so for me, it's those three boxes. And then doing so ahead of the NCAA portal window opening up, I think gives a clear picture of what Texas wants to present to clear running back targets. Now, we're still awaiting a decision from Trey Wisner. Will he return? Will he declare? Regardless, Texas is going to be in the market for a running back, Bobby. And based off of this move now and what we know about Texas needing to get its running game back on track, and back on track to me is not just needing a running back one in college football to be efficient. It's, hey, anybody in the backfield can put up some sort of respectable numbers. That starts with getting a coach in place at the running back spot who someone in the portal will look at and say, that's an attractive place to play with an attractive brand, school, conference logo, etc.
To your point, it's not just recruiting in the high school level, it's recruiting in the portal level. And of course, he was the coach of the star Florida running back this past year, Jaden Baugh, helped recruit Jaden Baugh out of the Atlanta area to Gainesville as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but really, and when Chad Scott was first let go, one of the things I had heard was that Steve Sarkisian really wanted someone with strong Southern ties to a major Southern city, whether that's Houston, Dallas, New Orleans, Atlanta, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, that area. And Jabbar Juluke really fits that mold and that blueprint, so to speak, to a T. He's from the city of New Orleans. Graduated from high school there, obviously was a former high school head coach in the city at Edna Carr, won the state championship. Your thoughts on the idea that Sark didn't just want to go get any coach, like Chad Scott had some ties, but not as deep to a single area like Juluke does?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting with, the hiring of Juluke, because look, New Orleans is always going to spit out talent, and it's tough to creak into that city and that state in its entirety if you don't have deep connections. And look, winning a state championship at a school like Edna Carr, that gets you in the high school doors of just about anywhere in the state. On top of that, I think it's Sark being on the offensive when looking at who the new regime is in Baton Rouge, right? Lane Kiffin and that staff, I think, is very clearly going to take on, kind of the personality of, we need to lock down the state. We need to make LSU feel authentic again, because it lost that under Brian Kelly. So if that's the approach, look, I think Sark kind of making the offensive here of saying, hey, you can try all you want to reclaim that state and lock it down, but we're going to have a little secret weapon up our sleeve as well. And with Alan Clark still on staff, Bobby, look at that. You got Baton Rouge and you got a deep connection to New Orleans, one on either side of the ball. That gets you into a lot of doors in the state of Louisiana.
And it's not just Louisiana where he recruited. We mentioned Baugh is from Atlanta, and he recruited him. He also recruited DJ Lagway out of Willis, Texas. Obviously, the Florida starting quarterback the last 2 years. He was one of the top players in the country coming out of high school. It was Juluke that recruited him. So I think Sark not only got his tie to a Southern city, but also upped the ante from a recruiting perspective. Another thing I want to say, a lot of these NIL recruitments these days are very competitive, whether it's, X thousand or whatever. Okay. Those are very competitive recruitments. some other competitive recruitments happen at the lower end of the scale. And you want a guy that has some knowledge of a particular area that might find some diamonds in the rough in a New Orleans, in a Houston area. Juluke might be able to help him in that regard as well. Now, specifically as it relates to Jaden Ball, CJ, we don't know what Jaden Ball is going to do, if he's going to go in the portal, et cetera. There are comments from Florida beat writers that they expect Jaden Ball, the very talented running back at Florida, to stay at Florida. That very well could be the case. We're not saying anything different than that, but you have to think that this at least gives Texas a better foot in the door if Ball likes Juluke and et cetera. He was recruited by him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And there's two things here. First, I know a lot of Texas fans, especially on our board, Bobby, have pointed out that, one, when the hiring at Texas was made official, the first thing on Jaden Ball's Instagram was the photo of Texas hiring Jabbar Juluke. Now, that doesn't mean, obviously, that he's going to jump in the portal, but there was also the connection that Arch and Ball followed each other on Instagram again. It's a little bit of that social media sleuthing, but it's worth mentioning at the very least. But on top of that, I have to look and put myself in the shoes of John Summerall. I take over the Florida job. What's my number one objective? Well, it's to retain DJ Lagway. What's number two? It's probably to keep Jaden Ball, another face of my program. Dallas Wilson also in that conversation. So as much as Texas fans and Texas would probably love to have Jaden Ball, that retention in Florida has to be at the very tip top of immediate priorities for Florida. Otherwise, it'd be malpractice in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's also recruited other players from the state of Florida, from the state of Louisiana. Caden Jones is a starting offensive tackle for the University of Florida as well. But we'll see what happens. You mentioned John Summerall, the new head coach at Florida. He's got a lot of irons in the fire right now because he's also in the college football playoff with Tulane. So how that all pans out, we'll see. But Longhorns hiring, and I think improving the recruiting staff in a number of ways for University of Texas with the hiring of Jabbar Juluke. All right, before we go forward and talk a little bit about practice this week, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Saturday Conversation, brought to you by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka, proud sponsor of your Texas Longhorns, as well as On Texas Football Saturday Conversation. Distilled and bottled by Fifth Generation Inc., Austin, Texas, 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly. Again, Tito's Handmade Vodka, proud sponsor of your Texas Longhorns. CJ, you and I have talked about this and been going over it. Hey, what is going on right now with Texas in practice? They practice 4 times this week. A number of guys have apparently not been practicing. We'll go over that list. You guys are going to do a little video segment later today and talk about it. But let's talk about some of the moves that we have heard this week in practice. Start off with what you've heard about Michael Terry, the true freshman out of the San Antonio area, who's moved around a little bit. He may have found a new home for the time being, at least.
Yeah, definitely. He's getting a lot of run right now, almost exclusively at the running back position. And, of course, that's intriguing. One, Texas, having lost CJ Baxter to the portal as the month of December has continued on, they need another big body in that room. But Michael Terry, with that versatility that was displayed in high school his senior year at Alamo Heights, it sounds like a very seamless transition. I've been told a number of times, folks have kind of been watching Terry at running back saying, maybe he doesn't go back to wide receiver. And that's something, of course, when Texas first got Michael Terry, you wondered what his initial or, permanent position would be. On top of that, sounds like he's really improving. Sounds like he's really impressing. He's also getting some burn, Bobby, with the first team kickoff return unit back deep. So to me, this is the staff looking at Michael Terry, seeing some of the leaps that he's taken as the season has gone on, saying, hey, we got to find a way to get the ball in this guy's hands. And if that's 2 ways to do it, look, I think that the future for Terry's looking pretty bright.
On Thursday, CJ, it came out that Trey Moore is not going to be playing in the bowl game. He is moving on to the NFL. As part of that, another positional move that we've been made aware of is Brad Spence, Now, Spence played almost exclusively edge this year after playing linebacker at Arkansas for his first couple of seasons in college. He came in and he immediately started playing edge, rushing the quarterback. I'm being told that he has moved to that hybrid position that was occupied previously by Trey Moore. No surprise there, but this would mean that next year they're going to try to get Spence on the field at the same time, most likely, as Leonga Lafau and Ty Anthony Smith.
Right.
So that's a good grouping in a position to be aware of. Some other news and notes, not practicing late in the week. And I think this is important because Michael Taft was practicing early in the week. On Friday, he did not practice. Sounds like he may be opting out of the bowl game. We're not sure of that. But sounds like it. Jalen Gilbo, Anthony Hill, Ethan Burke, Trey Moore, Manny Muhammad, Derek Williams, Connor Stroh as well. One important note is Wardell Mack has been practicing. There was a report earlier this week that the young man out of New Orleans area was going to put his name in the portal. He may still do that. I'm not debating that discussion, but as of right now, he's expected to stay at the University of Texas through the bowl game at the very least. Other team notes that you have from this week's practice, CJ?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's very important that this offensive line is still practicing, and that's the starting five that ended the season, right? And look, I know there's been some chatter. Haven't put any stock into about whether or not Art should play in this game. Absolutely, he should. But you got to protect the guy. And so to hear that all five of these guys are at least preparing to start the game, very encouraging on that end as well. I know I mentioned Michael Terry earlier. I want to continue to talk about those wide receivers because look, and it will trickle into tight ends. These month of practices, very important for Jamie French, for Kalik Lockett, right? Dalen McCutcheon, who's already kind of scratched that circle of trust. I've heard right now that, look, they're taking it all in. Now, does that equate to seeing time in December 31st? I'm not here to tell you that. But these extra practices, it's basically a spring practice light. And I think that trickles down to a Nick Townsend and Amari Winston, Jordan Washington, obviously with the future of Jack injuries in flux right now. These practices need to be taken advantage of by those two positions, and it's sounding like it as well. I also want to throw this at you too, Bobby. I know Kobe Black was dinged up during the middle of the season, right? He looked good against Texas A&M, came away with the interception. What can this, group of practices mean for him before folks start penciling in Grayson Littleton and Cade Phillips being your two starters? Could that save Texas some money out of the portal for having to go get a nickel or an outside corner? We'll see. But ultimately, this is a huge opportunity for Kobe Black to show the staff, hey, I'm here to stay. Y'all can trust me next year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kobe Black. I mean, I think of whenever Derek Williams went into the portal, I immediately thought, Xavier Filsaime did a really good job.
Yeah.
Because that means he's squarely ahead of a guy that was a year ahead of him in Derek Williams. Williams obviously still recovered from his knee injury, but maybe not 100% quite yet. This is important for everyone to know. CJ and I cover these guys from their high school days into their college days. We end up talking to them long after they leave. Okay. We wish all of these guys and their families nothing but the best of luck. So whether you're staying or going or whatever, you're once a Longhorn, always a Longhorn to us here at On Texas Football. We wish them all nothing but the best. All right. A couple other news and notes, CJ, that I want to mention. On Friday, the Texas volleyball team, the women's team, swept Indiana 3-0. On the other side of the bracket for them in the round of 16, Stanford lost to Wisconsin. So it will be Texas versus Wisconsin on Sunday at Gregory Gym, and that game will be either at 2 or 6:30. It will depend on TV choices that will be made, but either 2 or 6:30, Texas versus Wisconsin. Texas beat Wisconsin in the second game of the year this year up in Madison, Wisconsin. The Longhorns now 26-3 overall on the season. I believe ranked number 3 in the country at this point. CJ, other news and notes you want to go over before we let folks go this morning on this nice Saturday?
Yeah, for folks who haven't gotten a chance to watch Easton Royals junior huddle tape, go ahead and watch that. Texas sits right now with 2 commits in the 27 class, Grady James being the other out of the Houston area. What's going to be interesting, Bobby, and this is more looking ahead to January, but you obviously want to make the college football playoff. Texas did not do that this year, but that allows you to, one, get your ducks in a line when it comes to your team, your locker room, your coaching staff, and the upcoming recruiting cycle, as well as we start looking ahead towards probably the back end of the January, month of January. Your junior day is going to be very important. Making sure that your staff is in place is going to be something I'm going to keep an eye on. It sounds like right now there could be more changes coming as well to the Texas coaching staff.
Yeah, I got to wait and see how that goes. But I think you're right. If look, Texas wants to be in the college football playoff, no doubt about it. Yeah. But if there is a blessing in disguise, it's the fact that he could go ahead and make this change at running back today, yesterday, as opposed to a month from now, right? There's also the thought that, okay, you can have these guys in place by the time the portal opens on January 2nd.
Exactly.
So I think that is true. All right, CJ, that's going to do it for this morning's episode. You and Rod and Jeff will be back here in a couple hours talking about the portal itself and some other news and notes for us. But thanks again to our sponsor, Tito's Handmade Vodka. Once again, Tito's Handmade Vodka, proud sponsor of your Texas Longhorns, distilled and bottled by 5th Generation Inc., Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly. I'm going to go enjoy the Army-Navy game, I think, CJ. You have a good one, buddy. Take care. You said go Navy? Is there a reason?
Anchor down, baby.
Anchor down? There you go. All right, have a good one, bud. Welcome horse, guys.